Hello, everybody. We're living in a world where we have too much news. There's one news after another, distressing news after another. Every day we're talking about immigrants arriving. And this, at the beginning of the summer, there was another tragedy in Greece. I don't know whether or not you remember what happened. Right at the beginning of July, the Greek banks were closed. Greece was negotiating its restructuring plan with the IMF and with the European Central Bank. The banks couldn't open except for a few hours a day, and you could only get out 60 euros a day. And there were queues in front of the Greek banks of retired people, particularly, who had no bank cards and had no other choice other than to wait patiently outside the banks. So we've already forgotten about this, haven't we? We've already forgotten this crisis. This crisis, which, to us, we who are working in microfinance, affected a privileged population. These retired Greek people are privileged people, not because they live in Greece, where migrants would like to live today, but actually because they've got access to banking facilities. 70 people today of the world population does not have access to a bank. And these Greeks are part of the 30% of the human race who are lucky enough to be able to queue in front of the bank stores. And this this opportunity is obviously stronger within the developing areas and Europe. But if you were born, for example, in the developing world, only 10-15% of the population has access to a financial institution. So 10 to 15% has access to a savings account, or a credit card, or a bank account, or an insurance policy, or can make a deposit, or can borrow for their child's education, or save for their retirement. So 90% of the population doesn't have access to this. In Greece, as you saw this, it's over 88%. 90% of the Greek population have access to this. That's why they are privileged people, just as we are. So what is microfinance? Microfinance has been built within those countries where access to financial services only concerns a very small percentage of the population. And it's building within these countries a system which can offer underprivileged countries an access to saving and to credit and to loans and to payment systems, so which means they can have a checkbook or a credit card. So this was developed about 30 years ago. For example, here we have a Bolivian institution called Banco Sol, which is a form of bank where you have Bolivian farmers who can come and put their savings in. Who are the clients of these microfinancing organizations? They're small artisans, small shopkeepers in emerging countries, small farmers who have no other alternative other than to come to these institutions. So these financial institutions, and we say microfinancing institutions, they're not on the margin. They're actually an integral part of the worldwide financial system. And the microfinance is part of the financial world, which offers small businesses, small shopkeepers, small farmers in emerging countries a savings plan or an insurance. Just as within Europe, the Caisse d'Épargne or the Banque Populaire do as well. So this is no more nor less than an adaptation of popular banks or the Caisse d'Épargne or a Dutch bank. And these are banks, popular banks, which offer products to underprivileged populations. These populations, as we can see, are great in number, more than 700 million. They need this type of credit. So when an institution, a microfinancing institution, is well structured and well developed, it can sometimes can take the form of a bank, like this pro-credit bank in Kosovo. It looks like this. It looks like a bank, but the client, this man who's come here with his horse and cart, he's going to come and put his savings in pro-credit Kosovo. Kosovo. So he comes to place his savings, and it is an underprivileged client. He's not coming with his large Mercedes, driving up in front of the bank. It's a small, very small businessman who's using this financial service. Before ProCredit, he had no access to the financial system. He couldn't have a loan. He couldn't place his savings. He would have had to go and pay his electricity in cash or his gas, what have you. He couldn't have written a check, but thanks to ProCredit Kosovo, or he can use this financial system. This is an institution that has been developed in a developed market. Microfinance has more than 100 million micro-entrepreneurs. So 100 million households in Asia, Africa, Latin America, Eastern Europe, and Caucasia. These 100 million people who have access to these financial institutions, which are specialized and which offer them quality services and which are affordable. One of the first services is credit, microcredit. Even if credit isn't necessarily micro for these people, as you can see, why isn't it micro? Is that in these institutions, all these institutions actually represent, they lend 200 billion US dollars. That means for each entrepreneur is receiving a loan of $1,000. So it's a little credit. It's a credit that a loan. What does he need this $1,000? Well, maybe he's going to be developing his activity, maybe buying a new cart or a new horse, and he doesn't need much more than $1,000. So microcredit gives an impression of something very, very small, but which he might not need. But in fact, that's not true. With these $1,000, the major majority of these micro-entrepreneurs who's financed by these institutions can develop their activity and develop their business, just as this gentleman is doing. This also demonstrates that it's a very organized market, very developed organization. So we can find microfinance developed in over 130 countries, and there are an enormous number of institutions that are involved. So as I was telling you, there is more than 70% of households throughout the world who don't have easy access to the financial system. And that means there's a potential of 700 million households. And so in Southeast Asia and Africa, the level of financing for households in Africa is extremely low. Is it that's important in the fight against poverty and the fight against overall poverty? Yes, it is. If I can't lend, if I can't borrow, then of course actually it has an impact on the overall economy. So yes, it is important. So studies show that you can't have economic development without recourse to a financial system. So it's all. Rich countries have good banking penetration. So if you really want to help developing countries in the south and you want to fight against poverty and allow these populations to develop their activity, then you must allow them to have financial means to develop their activities, to have a credit, to have insurance. And it may seem obvious to you, but as I've explained, it's not always the case. And all these studies show that if you don't have access to these financial services, the economy will suffer. This local economy is interesting to us in Europe because it enables European economies to be able to have contact with these economies. It means the local populations can have an honest lifestyle, and it can also help. We will also hopefully be able to help the migrant issue that is a hot topic of today. So, what is the impact of these activities? We are, in fact, an ethical savings institution which loans or invests in microfinancial organizations. We also have fair trade and what have you, but what we're talking about today is microfinance. These financial institutions need massive amounts of money in order to pay out over 200 billion. So what we need to be able to finance these micro institutions so that they can finance their micro entrepreneurs. So this is the largest. We finance about 30 million micro entrepreneurs. These institutions pay taxes locally, and we insist on this. So they pay 400 million dollars locally, and if you think about the budgets of most African countries, is about 230 million dollars. If you've got businesses which are paying taxes locally, this is extremely important in order to be able to develop healthcare and educational systems. And we offer these investors who invested in our savings and funds, we can offer them 3, 4, 5 annual yield. Last year we had 4% net yield, because after all we're investors like the Caisse d'Épargne and like other investors, and you can hope to have financial profitability as well as having an impact on the social environment. So there are hundreds of millions who have not got access to the financial system, and so what we have is we've created financial tools in order to be able to attract investors, and particularly the classical financial institutions, Credit Suisse in Switzerland, and various insurance companies, the Caisse Centrale, AXA, the Maïf in France, BNP, AXA, I think I've said that, and who are investing in our products enormously. Unfortunately, in France, it's not possible for you and me, the average man in the street, in order to invest in microfinance. These are seen to be fairly risky investments. So they're only offered to the Swiss, people from Luxembourg and Belgium. And the regulations are going to change in France. We've just obtained in August the authorization to distribute to qualified investors, various retirement companies and insurance companies and wealth advisors, microcredits. So this is a first step, at least in France. And qualified investors are going to be able to invest in the products that we have to offer. Thank you very much.